You ready to get started? Let me just take a look. So yeah, we actually have a bunch of people joining us today. Welcome everybody. I will give you a brief introduction. Kyle will introduce himself. My name is Amy Jaramillo. I'm the scientific director here at Body Science in Miami. And my focus is the combination of functional medicine and specialization in for detoxifiers. So MTHFR falls into that category. Normally, I'll do a slide and I'll show you my picture, although you can see me now, and I'll give you my background. But I figured we're on class number 3. You've already seen that a couple of times in a row, so I decided, I'm not going to tell you my story this time about how I got involved with MTHFR. I don't want to bore you over and over again. Instead, we thought we would jump into it. So you had a chance to meet Kyle on the last call if you guys were on that. One point before you introduce yourself, I know we owe you guys the link from the last call. It just took us a little bit of editing time. We don't remove anything, but there was some black space at the beginning, and it took us a little bit of time to figure out. I don't know what happened over there, like an IT meltdown. Anyway, we should have that link for you later on today. So anybody that missed the last class or anybody that wants to go back and watch the last class, know that we should have it today. And again, this is number 3 as far as our classes. Our goal is 2 per week for 4 weeks to try and give a broad overview of MTHFR, what it is, and what the symptoms are. We discussed in the last 2 classes, what is MTHFR and what are common symptoms. And then Kyle, let me introduce you. You introduce yourself, and then guys, we'll jump into the gut side.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Jordan. I'm the nurse manager of infusions over here. As you know, maybe from the last webinar, maybe not. So just a quick intro. I've worked 10 years in ER and trauma as a nurse and a paramedic before I turned functional. Started working with Amy and really just seeing the power behind applying science, just really personalized medicine. And so it's changed the way I practice medicine, to change the way I do my own a regimen for health. And so I'm really excited to bring this to you guys with Amy.
And just know you folks are looking at and talking to 2 clinical health experts that happen to have MTHFR, right? That's kind of how we found ourselves in this area. The question was, what exactly is going on and how do we resolve it? And then moving forward, how do we resolve it for all the patients that come on into the clinic over here? All right, so just know you're getting the nitty gritty from a couple of folks that know what we're dealing with, and not just because we
have felt it.
Yeah, not just because we clinically deal with it with folks just like you in the clinic every single day, but because we live with it and have already solved a lot of the MTHFR puzzles, again, for ourselves, for our patients. And so it just made sense to add a lot of education out there. You probably know there are so many questions when it comes to MTHFR. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation. Yeah. So our mission at the beginning of this year, you and I were talking about what is it that we want to do for MTHFR, right? So anybody that comes into the clinic, we have a good handle on, but for everybody else, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever you read or whatever you see or everybody else and their responses. And so our goal is really just to provide very unbiased education when it comes to MTHFR. All right. And so today we're doing a class on, we call this gut feeling. It's a gut feeling because we're doing gut stuff. And then we were thinking, what do we want to call this? And let's do gut feeling. Okay. Will you bring our slides up for us?
Definitely.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't recall, how many slides do we have? Maybe
7.
Okay, so here's our mission. We could go, just 7 slides, guys. So again, here's our objective to give you a clear understanding of gut health, specifically as it pertains to people that have MTHFR, and then open things up for questions. I saw already there was a question that came through. We'll wait until the end for all those questions. Our goal is about 20 minutes, 15 to 20, going through an explanation, and then another 5 or so to go through any questions that you guys have. So I open it up, and again, Kyle and I have come up with a gut feeling. You and I, when I look at it now, it's kind of goofy, but it sounded good at the time. It sounded good at the time. MTHFR, food sensitivities, and leaky gut. All right, so that's what we're talking about today. And the sensitivity and specificity, those are laboratory terms. And the reason that this conversation largely focuses on sensitivity and specificity, so we're trying to do 2 things. Thing number 1 is explain what these conditions are and why it is more likely that you may suffer with GI changes and develop things like leaky gut if you have MTHFR. And number two, give you an idea of the labs that we run here at our clinic. And to that point, I would tell you there is an accuracy question mark when it comes to measuring food proteins, and specifically that is referred to in lab terms as sensitivity and specificity. And so we routinely have people that come on in that have done leaky gut testing, and one of two things: either they have a myriad of false positives, and so they're eliminating a lot of foods that they don't have to. And anybody that's been down that road, you know what a sacrifice it is to start eliminating things that you don't like. It's one thing if it's causing inflammation. It's another thing altogether if it's a lab that wasn't sensitive enough to determine one protein versus another. And then as well, lots of false negatives. So just specifically determining when something reaches a positive threshold and flags in a lab versus when it doesn't. So one of the keys, and we'll get through it in the lab portion, is just making sure that you're getting testing from labs that have high sensitivity and specificity, right? Because even though the lab is accurate, it still may not be sensitive or specific enough to narrow down a certain issue or a certain food or a certain part of the intestines. All right, let's see our first slide.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Introduction.
Kind of anticlimactic. Okay, let's see our second one. I was going to define it, but do we need to? Is there anything that goes along with this?
That's it. No. Okay. Here we go.
Yeah. All right. So why are we talking about food sensitivities? One, if you have MTHFR, you are more likely to have things like leaky gut, and let's talk about why. But even aside from that, let's talk symptoms.
Yes.
And the reason, you and I see it all the time, people that know that they're MTHFR positive and every single symptom that they have, they attribute to MTHFR.
Yes.
Okay, and that's a problem because then the approach is try and methylate it out. And in spite of using oftentimes over-methylation as a strategy, a lot of the symptoms don't resolve. And that's because those symptoms aren't MTHFR. It's a separate, different issue that may or may not be related to MTHFR. And so if what you have is leaky gut, or to say it differently, intestines, and primarily we're talking about the small intestines that are over permeable in a way where food particles are leaking through, then commonly symptom-wise, we know at the top of the list, fatigue.
Yes.
Achy joints,
fogginess, itchiness as well.
Yeah,
especially if you're prone to it, like me.
Yeah, that brain fog is one of the worst. Like people
Horrible.
yeah, exactly. Some people low-grade headaches.
Yeah.
What else? Just tired weakness, right? Not just fatigue, but like general malaise. Anything else come to mind?
Poor concentration, irritability sometimes too.
Yeah. So you can see, because those symptoms largely overlap with an MTHFR class of symptoms, you can see why so many folks have MTHFR. So that's just the genetic predisposition. They build up toxins. Those toxins are largely eliminated by the intestines. Okay, that's going to damage both the small and large intestines and going to create increased permeability, right? And so now leaky gut is going to be the result. So even though MTHFR may have been one of the predisposing factors, MTHFR did not really cause leaky gut, although it's more common in MTHFR because of toxins that are going to track the gut. And because the symptoms look the same, and because everybody with MTHFR seems to be kind of programmed in the idea of methylate. It's not that methylation is a good thing or a bad thing. The bottom line is leaky gut is not a methylation related issue. Okay, and so what will happen is for a lot of people, they'll treat MTHFR with methylation and still have a myriad of symptoms, gut related issues being one of them, right? And again, the poor focus, the poor concentration, the headache, everything else that goes along with it. And the knee-jerk reaction is to say, oh, this is MTHFR. But it's not. It's a gut-related issue. And here is the key. I think for me, my take-home message, okay, if nothing else comes out of this, remember, it doesn't matter how much methylation support you add. If what you have is a gut-related issue, if you have gut inflammation, methylation is not going to be the solution. Okay, so even though, again, MTHFR may be the genetic predisposition that predisposes you, like I use the same word twice, that predisposes you to gut-related issues because you've got these poorly packaged or unmethylated or improperly methylated toxins going to the intestines, doesn't change the fact you can have leaky gut with or without MTHFR, and you can have MTHFR with or without leaky gut. And regardless the solution, if you have leaky gut and if you have MTHFR, do not methylate yourself to the point where you are so over methylated, adding that many carbons, right? Bodies don't like that. And you start turning on all kinds of other reactions that become very exhausting to the cells, right? Because they're forced to keep methylating, and that's not even the real issue. So thing number one, the symptoms mirror MTHFR. It doesn't mean that they are MTHFR, and certainly they're not going to resolve by methylating. And the key, if you're methylating properly and the symptoms haven't gone away, whatever you do, don't keep methylating. And then my point is, don't add more and more methylation. So it's probably the thing that we see the most, right?
Yeah, probably the most.
Yeah, just becoming so super physiologic with methylation dosing. The levels are so high, and it's because you're trying to chase down symptoms. Again, symptoms that you may be more likely to have because of your MTHFR genetic predisposition, but this is not an MTHFR related phenomenon in a way that you can solve with an MTHFR related treatment. Okay, so that's thing number one.
Yeah. And this is something like happened with me, actually. I'm a double C, and so my methylation is very poor. I suffered throughout my teens dramatically, especially just not knowing, eating junk food, not hydrating appropriately, not taking the correct supplementations and vitamins, and not eating the greens that I should, right? So nobody wants to do that. Once I started with Amy and she was treating me, I still had a little bit of bloating. I didn't say anything about it because I thought it was going to get better, thinking it was just the MTHFR. I wanted so badly to attribute everything to MTHFR, but it's not the case. And so upon further study, what we found was that I had certain bacterial competitions in my gut. So I had certain ratios that were off, probably due to the toxin exposures that were just being dumped into my intestines. Unmethylated toxins, they stay active, right? So your body won't be able to deactivate them and then throw them into the gut for passage, how it's normally done. Instead, you're actively passing these toxins that they're still alive into the gut that destroy your intestinal flora. What happens from there is now you're going to have bad bacterias outcompete and just create all kinds of mess. So this is really what happened with me. And, luckily we were able to find out. She says, I don't think that's your MTHFR. I think that's just something else going on.
Gut, right?
Exactly. So this is relatable. It happens, and there's a way through it.
Yeah. And then a couple points about that. So just talking about overgrowth of good bacteria, or growth of bad bacteria, guys, we're talking about is dysbiosis. So when you look it up as a medical term or when you see it on your labs, we're talking about dysbiosis. So dysbiosis, or a dysbiotic gut, we're describing primarily a large intestine when we're doing a 3-day stool test, and we're looking at the overgrowth. Even when it's good bacteria, the idea of throwing more and more probiotics in is not the key. And then again, to Kyle's point, remember, methylation is occurring in large part in phase 2 of the liver. So the toxins are going to run through the liver, and once those toxins have been disengaged, right, so they've been packaged properly or grabbed onto by a methyl group, they're going to wind up typically in the intestines. That's the path of elimination for methylated toxins that are on their way out from the liver. And so there's no surprise if you have phase 2 of the liver that's deficient in its ability to properly methylate. You can't package toxins in a way where they're safe for the intestines. Nonetheless, the liver is going to put them into the large intestine for the most part, and they're going to start causing problems. So if that's thing number one, thing number two, foods do not cause food sensitivities.
What?
Okay. So food sensitivities, we're really talking about the small intestine over here. And so you did not, if you're somebody that has food sensitivities, again, you'll know it because of all the symptoms that we described before. Food sensitivity, what we're talking about is an autoimmune regulated condition, and we'll get to that. We've got a slide for it. But before we get over there, I mean, here's the bottom line. You didn't eat a food that caused food sensitivity. So let's say on a food sensitivity test, you see that you've got something, spinach for us is one of the more common things that we see, but we'll see all kinds of stuff. It's not as if you ate a lot of spinach and then made a spinach food sensitivity. Okay, instead what happened is there's food sensitivity that occurred because of inflammation. So common causes the most common causes of food sensitivities, right? The immune system that becomes dysregulated and confuses foods that have leaked through the gut into the bloodstream as an invader, or foods that are inside the gut. So that's an IgA inside the gut versus IgG outside of the gut. So either way, what we're looking at is, okay, here's the top of the list. Prescription steroids.
Oh, yeah.
Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, super high stress, like super high emotional stress, stomach bugs, like a bacterial stomach bug or whatever the treatment was to correct it. Those really are the top four, and illnesses of the gut. So what happens, something creates inflammation in the gut. The immune system becomes dysregulated. In people that are poor detoxifiers, the immune system commonly is already on high alert. Okay. And so it starts confusing things more easily than it would in somebody that doesn't have so many toxins floating around. And voila, a food sensitivity occurs. So I'm gonna just describe, here is kind of a food sensitivity concept, just so we all have a picture of what a gut is looking like. So there we go. So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about the cell body of the intestines and the cell. We're talking about the microvilli, which are little hair-like projectiles on the top. And we're talking about on either side and food passing through. And a layer of fat that separates the two. Vitamin D is critical for that. So it's one of the reasons for us, we're looking for vitamin D levels that are optimal. And so the food is going to pass right to the middle. And what happens at the base of this microvilli, so as food goes through, tiny particles get to the very bottom, right? And the probiotics largely live at the base of the microvilli. And they're going to digest the food particles and convert them into the minerals or the ingredients of that food. So they're going to take B12 out. They're going to take vitamin C out. They're going to take and then if you look at the cells like this, in between the cells is a small gap or a tight gap junction. And those minerals are going to pass through into the blood supply. Okay, so what we're talking about is, it's not the minerals and the vitamins and the cofactors passing through, it's actually food particles, and that is an IgG leaky gut type of situation. Or again, they create inflammation, but they don't actually break through, in which case it's an IgA. Okay, tell me. Oh, the questions? I know.
No. Have we been screen? Yeah.
Tell me again. Hang on, guys. We're technical difficulty. Give me 1 sec.
Just want to make sure that the screen share is going.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I think. All right, hang on. Here we come.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. All right. So bullet point number 3 primarily happens in the small intestines. That's what we were talking about.
If nobody saw it, this was the first one here.
Is that true? We're not screen share?
So. I think so.
Oh, no, you guys. I'm so sorry. We may not have been on screen share.
Who sets this up?
A group of
You didn't miss much. You didn't miss much. This was our first one.
You didn't see my hand explanation of the gut. Did you guys see that? I saw a bunch of comments coming through, and I thought, let's wait to the end.
Yeah.
That may have been the comments. I'm so sorry. Okay.
This is the first one.
Okay.
You guys didn't miss much. We like to really talk about our experiences live instead of having things just jotted down on a PowerPoint. So
all right. But
this is what this.
Yes, so we're only 3 slides in. Okay, we're only 3 slides in. If you feel like you've got a team of non-professionals that are leading you, you may in fact have that.
And here we are.
Okay, so we were primarily happening in the small intestine, but also considered the large intestine. That's why we do a 3-day stool test. And then probiotics. So interestingly, so SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, trying to fix things by throwing a bunch of probiotics in, you can wind up colonizing probiotics in the small intestine. So, if the thinking is just to try and solve this yourself, I'd caution against it. I know one of the biggest complaints that we hear is it's hard to find good functional people. And so I realize for that reason, a lot of people are stuck trying to have to figure this out yourself. I guess, again, one of the reasons that you and I chose to do this kind of educational class, right, is to make sure that you're empowered to have the information that you need and find specialists that can really help. But it can be difficult on your own to comprehensively treat, and you can wind up with other problems that result. So just be careful. Again, the cure for leaky gut or the cure for an IgA or submucosal membranes, again, inside of the gut, is not just throwing down probiotics and, in fact, dysbiosis, so an overgrowth even of commensal or healthy microflora, can be made infinitely worse by adding even more probiotics into that equation. So, okay, so I think we covered everything. We covered number one.
Yeah.
Remember, just because you have these symptoms, it's not necessarily MTHFR. It could be something that, as somebody with an MTHFR mutation, you are more predisposed to, but you still can't fix it with methylation. Thing number two, if you've got a food sensitivity to a certain food, that food didn't cause it. You do have to eliminate that food for approximately 3 months in order for the gut to heal. Number three, we're talking primarily about the small intestines, but usually it's the large intestines that get sick as well. So you need to, when you're talking about gut issues, so whether we're talking about stomach, small intestine, or large intestine, right? So stomach for the acid side of things, and lots of folks have GERD or they've been already put on acid blocker. So we're talking about the entire GI tract, well, primarily the stomach down, right? And then again, just be careful if you're self-treating. I recognize again why so many people feel like they're forced into that situation, but just be very, very cautious, because recognize you almost have an equal likelihood of creating even more dysbiosis or gut-related disease by just tossing things in. Okay.
Yeah. And that one hits home for me too. Just the fact that too much good bacteria is still a bad thing. So you want to know exactly what's going on. There's testing for that for sure.
Can I tell you the example that I'll normally use for people? I'll normally here in the office, I'll ask people like, what's your favorite thing? And I've gotten all kinds of answers. I've got like a lady that brought her dog in, and so she loves little dogs.
That's my favorite thing.
Okay, but I recently had a lady that loves flowers, and she has like a flower garden, and she grows orchids in a greenhouse outside of her home, but she loves roses. So, here was my example, and this is my example when it comes to probiotics or commensal or healthy microflora. I told her, imagine you think about the drive up to your home and the walkway in front of your door. And so what you plant is your favorite flowers. Okay, that's commensal or healthy microflora. And whatever it takes, let's say it's 10 rose bushes. And what you have is an unbelievably beautiful walkway, like the thing that you love. Okay. And then you decide that you're going to leave your house and not prune the flowers and not even show up at your house for whatever it's going to be, 3 months. Okay, so what used to be the thing that you love is now totally overgrown. Now you park your car and you try and get out of the walkway to get to your door. And there's all the thorns, there's roses everywhere. Okay, it was your favorite, okay, in a reasonable count, in a reasonable diversity, right? Some red roses and some yellow roses. So the whole garden looked planned and beautiful. Probiotics are very similar. They live in neighborhoods, and they each have their own role and responsibility. They have their own unique set of minerals, vitamins, cofactors that they're responsible for. Okay. Here's what you don't want to do. First of all, you don't want to devastate them. So antibiotics, I don't know if I'd mentioned antibiotics as being one of the biggest decimators when it comes to the microflora, but you don't want to afterwards try and populate by just putting in a handful of strains. What they're going to do is they're going to overgrow. So if the way a garden looks best is the biggest plants in the back, right, and the smallest plants in the front. So imagine that's reversed. The tiny plants in the back and the trees in the front, you can't even see what's in the back, right? And the whole thing is overgrown. So probiotics have neighborhoods. Boulardii is a pretty good probiotic that keeps everybody in their own neighborhoods. Lactobacillus, I know a lot of people take it, can overgrow pretty fast. We know already Bacteroides versus Firmicutes. So there's two large genus of probiotics that live in the gut. You want them balanced. And one of the things that we see most commonly is an imbalance between those two families, and it makes people sick because of nutritional depletions that result. And so again, just kind of to your point, the goal is take caution if you think you have gut-related issues because you're not moving your bowels routinely, or you're moving your bowels too frequently, or because you eat and you just generally don't feel great and you feel like you're not digesting food, gas and bloating after eating, and as well if you have the other symptoms that we discussed that feel MTHFR-ish, right, but they're kind of secondary to gut, then consider getting proper testing, right? Because otherwise you build this giant overgrown garden, and now there are certain foods that you become great at getting nutrients from, and everything else that becomes a nutritional depletion. All right?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Next slide. All right. This is just a very brief statement. We talked about it when we opened the call. We have people that bring in labs all the time, and especially for things like leaky gut. it's hard for laboratories to differentiate proteins. Some are super good and a lot, even though they're accurate, they're more accurate for a family of things. Or, for example, they'll test them like eggs, but they'll test the raw protein. And unless you're eating raw eggs, right, the cooked protein doesn't have the same response when it comes to a lab. So in other words, what I'm saying is you just need really good accuracy. There's a test, I believe we have it on the MTHFR page. It's the one that we normally use over here. You don't have to use that one on the MTHFRstore.com. But what I would tell you is you really want to get clear on sensitivity and specificity. Otherwise, you're either going to wind up eliminating too many foods, which is terrible because you leave yourself without enough foods to eat, or you're going to get a bunch of false negatives, so you keep eating foods and you don't correct the problem. And the other thing, we normally run 184 foods.
Big panel.
Yeah, we started and we looked at a couple of 94, 96, and 100. It's pretty standard. And then what we found was there weren't enough foods listed. So yeah, like milk would be something that you can't have. And then the question is, could you have almond milk? And almonds were there. But then the next question is, if almonds were flagged and dairy is flagged, could you have rice milk, right? Could you have macadamia nut milk? And so those things weren't there. So try and get a big panel. The goal when it comes to food sensitivities, once something has been measured, you know if it's safe or not. Do not off-road. If it hasn't been tested for, don't introduce it into your diet during the time that you're trying to correct your gut. Otherwise, you just can't tell. So again, the one that we normally use here in-house is 184 foods and high sensitivity and specificity. I think there is a sample test result on the MTHFR page, but as well, we realized it's going to be a little too much to go through all of this and go through test results. So we decided to make a part 2. And the part 2, we will go through lab results so that you can see them. But again, the key when it comes to testing, it must be accurate as far as telling you the food. So be careful when it comes to where you're ordering these tests.
All right.
All right. So we're talking immune stuff. And so first, let's just differentiate the components of the immune system.
Please.
Okay. And then let's go and talk about the chronic immune system versus the innate immune system, not in a way where we just go scientific crazy, but instead just kind of a cursory overview. And for anybody that wants to dive deep into science, it's the world that we love. So let us know. We're never sure when we're doing a call or a webinar how in-depth to get before you guys are like, oh, I'm done, like yawning off at home. And so not to say that a lot of people aren't interested in the science, but to say some people are geeks and some people just want a cursory overview. So let us know and we can always go deeper into things. But let's just first differentiate IgG from IgA from IgE. You're an IgE guy for sure.
Yes, I am.
All right, so that's itchy, it's histamines. So IgE is allergies, period, right? Allergies, in my estimation, in my experience, do not get fixed, right? You have an allergy, and typically you have that allergy from that point forward. You can go and get allergy kind of inoculation shots, and that can work, but it doesn't change the fact we're not talking about eliminating foods for 3 months and then starting them again. We're talking about an acute histamine or histaminergic reaction. And once you have that reaction to foods, you want to be careful, right? Because if the reaction becomes out of hand, that's how you have really an allergy crisis. So if you're not sure, get tested. And that's just a basic allergy test for foods. It's typically covered by insurance, although insurance typically only covers 12 foods, but they're the 12 most common foods when it comes to triggering allergies. So if you're not sure, get tested. But here's the differentiation. IgE is the acute immune system, meaning it's going to turn on rapidly. So you're going to eat a food and you're going to have that reaction certainly within 30 minutes, for some people within 30 seconds, right? And it's short-lived unless you continue coming in contact with that allergen. So a good example, on the food side, you eat something and you almost instantly get gas, bloating, itchiness, whatever that's going to be, and then it resolves a couple of hours later. On a non-food related idea, it would be something like pollen. So you walk outside and it's a high pollen count and there's something close to your front door. So you're sneezy and your eyes water for the length of time until you drive away. Right. And so again, it comes on fast because it's histamine. It makes a histaminergic. So whether it's a runny nose or watery eyes, and then once you're away from it or once you stop eating it, right, it will go away. And typically histaminergic reactions are going to go away again, in a relatively short period of time, providing you get away from that trigger. And the key is these are not things that you're going to correct in 3 months. This is acute immune system. Okay, tell us a story on IgG, IgA. So it's a chronic immune side of things.
Exactly. So IgA is what's working inside of your intestines. That's going to affect more the mucosal membranes.
Yeah.
And so again, it's misidentification of your body attempting to find something. It's an over response of your immune system. It wants to fight. It's active. There's a food that it's going to misidentify as a bad guy, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's going to come in fighting. Your immune system's going to come in with its IgA warriors.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what's going to happen is it's not going to fight the food, right? So it's going to find the areas in the gut where you already have inflammation. It's going to attack those areas, and it's typically in the lining of the gut.
Yep.
And what ends up happening is now you will actually create spaces, actual spaces in the lining of the gut. And that's where all kinds of crazy things can get through.
Yeah. And it's going to transition then into IgG, which is where things start coming through. IgA is mucosal membrane. So it's anywhere that a mucosal membrane exists. So traditionally it's ear, nose, throat, all the way through the GI tract and out to the colon. And so for lots of people, they know that they've got IgA. For a lot of people, they have IgA sensitivities to dairy. They know it because, they get like that phlegm. Like they'll have a food. Yeah, and they keep doing that. Yeah, exactly. Totally. They get like the post-nasal, or they get like the phlegmy thing. And then they're like, they keep feeling like a popping in their ears.
Exactly.
That's IgA. And so if you have it, you want to try and track down the food. So you can do it through process of elimination. But here's the challenge. And then let's go down the IgG road. We're talking about the chronic immune system. And so unlike an IgE, which is an allergy, the chronic immune system lasts for 7 to 10 days. So we're talking about chronic inflammatory cytokines, interleukins, tumor necrosis factor. And so what happens is the level builds up over time. So maybe you have something that you are IgA or IgG responsive to. You're going to make inflammation. The following day, you eat more of it, you increase the inflammation. And this game goes on for like 7 to 10 days of inflammation building up higher and higher. So for me, I have found without testing, I can almost never guess it.
It's very hard.
Right, because it's so many unusual combinations of things. And so again, when we're talking about the chronic immune system, unlike IgE, so that's an allergy, the chronic immune system, that's what leads to disease. Right. So you keep inflammation in a body chronically day after day. And it's only a matter of time for most individuals until they develop autoimmune dysregulation. And going back to MTHFR, and why we're talking about this for folks that have MTHFR, the higher the inflammatory burden in the individual, when those immunoglobulin molecules start increasing, the more likely the chronic immune system is to become confused. Right. And so also, let me just take a step back before we go to IgG. Here's the example I would tell you. When you're thinking about immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin E, immunoglobulin M, what we're talking about is, and the way I normally think about it, it's like the military. So if I'm Army and you're Marines, right? And then you and I are both military, but we have 2 totally different jobs. So maybe I'm ground troops, right? And you're Marine, so you're first to go in. Or maybe I'm Navy, so I'm on a ship. The bottom line is different areas of the military have different responsibilities, and they don't really trade, right? They each have their own thing. The immunoglobulins in the immune system, we're talking about white cells, they are doing different tasks. And so just because you're IgA mediated and immunoglobulin A is creating inflammation in the intestines, doesn't mean you couldn't also be IgG. And it also doesn't mean that you couldn't have some acute or allergic reactions of IgE. And so going back to not just sensitivity and specificity in the lab, but again, I like the 184 foods. I almost always test for both IgG and IgA, right? Because going back to your point, if IgA is mucosal membrane, so it's tearing those holes, IgG is going to be the next thing, or immunoglobulin G, because that's the part of the immune that's going to scavenge the bloodstream, versus IgA, which is scavenging the inside of the mucosal membrane or gastrointestinal lining. Okay, so if IgA has been active for an extended period of time, it's just then going to be the next step. So remember, the intestines are designed to be permeable, but only semi-permeable, right? Only very, very tiny nutrients should break through. But when the junctions start opening up and larger molecules of food, then the space gets wider and wider, and more foods and larger pieces. Now, we're not talking about a chicken wing flying through. We're still talking about tiny molecules, but nonetheless, you start having more and more foods. And that's when IgG, or immunoglobulin class G, so a whole different part of the military. So going back to the military analogy, if Marines are the first to go in, right? So if there's an issue, you call the Marines, and then the question is, at what point do you need Air Force? And you call them in. At what point do you need ground troops? Ideally, you send the first guys in, they take care of everything, and you don't wind up with a mass war. Okay, but in this situation, again, if you cannot correct IgA, so let's say antibiotics, and we're not talking about whether antibiotics are useful or not useful. I would first just start by saying, I don't dislike antibiotics. There's a place for antibiotics. So we talk to people all the time that are absolutely no antibiotics. Listen, if you have an infection, a substantial infection that's not resolving, and you don't take antibiotics, you can find yourself in a very, very serious situation. Okay, by that same measure, I'd be the first to admit that clinicians are the purveyors of leaky gut, because routinely antibiotics are used when perhaps they should not be. So an infection has not been verified or cultured, so we don't know the sensitivity, so we just throw an antibiotic at it. And as well, for people that are taking them, they just can't miss work. They see the first sign that they think is infection, so they go and they ask for it. Nonetheless, what you want to try and do is avoid as often as possible the things that can cause leaky gut or immunoglobulin A increases, or when you come in contact with those things, you just want to take corrective GI steps. We normally use a probiotic for antibiotics when we use antibiotics in this office. We try and use natural antibiotics when we can, plant tannins and uber ursi, providing we get a lab culture that shows that they're actually effective. All right, so that was kind of a tangent. I don't even know. Let me go back to the IgG. That was a way off course. Okay, tell us the IgG story.
You can see how everything starts to work together. So from the MTHFR not allowing proper methylation, toxins getting into the stomach, into the intestines, bacteria, your microflora becoming damaged. So now you have lining of the gut that's being overpopulated with
dysbiosis,
possibly
everywhere.
Pathogenic bacteria. These bacteria that attract irritability, these cell wall linings start opening up, and now foods, little microscopic particles actually starts getting through, hence leaky gut.
And then the IgG part, because now it's in the bloodstream, that's typically where people start complaining of joint aches and pains, right? Because imagine anywhere where the immunoglobulin G sees foods and attacks it, so that's everywhere. When that blood laced with those particles of food gets to the brain, immunoglobulin G is going to attack it, and now what you're going to feel is foggy brain, poor focus, poor concentration. Right now, that blood is going to move to a joint, and now you're going to feel joint achiness. So my point is, oftentimes you feel like that systemic inflammatory burden. And for us, for a lot of times when we ask people, how do you feel? And they're not quite sure, they can't pinpoint it. And the question is, do you feel inflamed? Is that kind of the underlying etiology? And most people say that's exactly how I feel. I feel inflamed. And no surprise, because we're looking at a dysregulating immune system that's chasing what it thinks is an invader. Particles of food do not belong in the blood supply. And so anytime that they break through what should have been semi-permeable, just to allow the minerals, the vitamins, the cofactors through, but has become permeable to the extent of actual tiny particles to go through, and then again, upregulating a chronic immune system. So remember, a chronic immune system is the thing that's going to cause disease. Unlike the acute immune system that starts and then turns off. So you don't want a chronic immune system to be on all the time. That's how it becomes confused and kind of the hallmark of autoimmune type diseases.
And the inflammation that you'll feel it's very personalized. So we see it all the time. A lot of patients, let's say with plaque lesions, they kind of get thicker.
Oh, skin.
It'll be more, it'll be
Yeah.
itchier. That knee that typically acts up with the weather, maybe it'll start hurting. And it's like, it's not even humid. It's not even cold outside, but it's hurting. So you'll know your spots same way we know ours.
For me, when I eat tomatoes, I almost always know it. Like this joint over there will just hurt just a little bit. It's true as far as eczema and psoriasis.
Exactly.
We'll see that plaqued lesion. So rather than a flat area of the skin that's red, we'll actually see, and if anybody out there is dealing with eczema or psoriasis, you'll know it's like you come in contact with a certain food and then you get that raised lesion. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right. You want to see our next slide?
Yes.
Okay. We just put the slides together. I would love to tell you that we had prepared for this. We did, but we got tied up in a little bit of a crazy clinical day. And so we reviewed them just before we went on. We created them on another day. We just forgot them. So when I say, hey, let's see the next slide, it's really me saying, hey, what's our next slide? Let's take a look at the next slide. All right. So then let me move down. Okay. Hang on one sec. Okay. Leaky gut. Walk us through it.
Okay. And as you can see, occurs with dysregulated immune system. We just talked about that, and it usually starts the circle, as I was saying. So the slides a lot of times are for you guys. We already, we know this, we live this.
Yeah.
So we can put these slides together on a fly, and it's more important to us to have a conversation with you as opposed to reading off a slide. And I think, we've heard a lot that that's the preferable way to go about it. So you can see here, just that cycle usually starts with unmethylated toxins. Create a mimicry issue where the immune system identifies foods as toxins, but they are not. And mimicry is simply, it mimics, it thinks it's one thing and it's actually not.
I mean, imagine proteins are the hallmark of a lot of things, including bacteria, including viruses. So you see this protein, the body is clear on the fact that foods don't belong in the bloodstream. Invaders like bacteria and viruses can show up in the bloodstream. And so mimicry is the fact that the proteins of food can masquerade, especially when the protein base pairs look similar to bacteria, bad bacteria or bad viruses. And so the immune system, through misdirection, right, mimicry, really does think that food is an invader. Again, food does not belong in the bloodstream, as you'd imagine. And so the immune system will chase that food and exhaust itself for the next 7 to 10 days trying to get this stuff back out. Yeah.
Yep. More common in MTHFR because people with toxic burdens have more confused innate immune system.
Right. So then, just talking innate immune. So we're switching the conversation from a chronic immune to the innate immune. So toxins have a tendency of causing the innate immune system to turn on, but have a hard time turning off, right? And it's because, imagine, it's not really, from my estimation, it's not really autoimmune. So when I think about autoimmune in its truest sense, it is a body that actually is confused, right? There isn't an invader, but it attacks like there is. But in truth, this is a reasonable immune system that knows that there's something that doesn't belong. Okay, so it's not truly autoimmune, although I know that's how it's looked at. And I know this disease is classified as autoimmune, but it really is an immune system, right, or the white cells that are identifying something that doesn't belong and they're attacking it. The confusion is, again, it's not bacterial, it's not viral. You probably don't need the chronic immune system, right? So that's probably the issue. But the innate immune system, or the scavengers, right, they get turned on, and long after those food particles are gone, you want the body to turn them back off. But because the inflammatory burden in the body is so high, specifically in individuals with things like MTHFR mutations, the immune system is constantly upregulated. And so it's easy for the innate immune system to become confused in a long-term mess where it turns on. And because there's this toxic burden and the immune system is always scavenging around for it, it can't turn off. And that really is how autoimmune conditions start, right? So the body now, it knocks on every door to say, hey, are you the invader? Hey, are you the invader? And anything that looks close to the invader, it will attack. So if the protein in the food resembles thyroid tissue, then the antibodies will start attacking the thyroid, and that's something like Hashimoto's, right? If the immune system starts attacking the myelin sheath, right, of the neurons, right, then that can lead to things like multiple sclerosis. So the concept of mimicry, is the fact that, again, the immune system has a target of what it's looking for, okay, but it doesn't exactly have the full picture. So it's like this. I go to a bank. I'm trying to think of it. Hang on. I go to a bank, and then there's a robber that comes in, and the guy holds a gun. So everybody in the bank, right, goes down on the floor. And then you come in afterwards, and you're like, hey, Aim, what did the robber look like? Now, I don't exactly know, and we don't have a mugshot. So my description is whatever my basic description is. Now, you go out, and you're trying to find that person, but all you have is maybe a hair color and a general height, right? There are so many people that look like that. How are you going to find it? So instead, you go and rough everybody up that looks like that. You attack everybody that looks like that. And maybe you finally find the bank robber, and maybe you don't. But here's the bottom line. You don't have a mugshot, so you have no way to tell. So again, your only option is essentially to go to everybody that meets that very broad-based, very general description, which is, who knows, maybe 30% of the population. So now imagine, first of all, on your side, how exhausting that is.
The resources, I'm sure.
So fatigue is going to be common in these autoimmune related inflammatory conditions, whether it's chronic immune or innate immune. So it becomes really fatiguing for the immune system. And people describe that. I feel fatigued all the time. I feel low energy. I just feel general malaise. And as well, think about how hard it is to turn that off, because now you know there's a bank robber. If you don't find them, they're just going to rob another bank. So your responsibility is you got to find the bank robber. But it doesn't change the fact, if you pass, I don't know, 10,000 people in the street by driving in your car all day long, you're looking for a needle in a haystack, but you actually have to stop the car and search every single person. Right. So again, an innate system in the immune gets turned on, and it just doesn't really have a good way to modulate itself back down.
Yeah. All right. And our last slide.
Okay. Yeah. Last slide, guys. Last slide. Okay. So you want to tell us, we're just talking testing. And again, we decided if we try and do a bunch of testing or show you testing at this time, we've got the likelihood of just overwhelming everybody with just too much geek out
science.
Those
are very comprehensive tests anyways. 10, 12 pages worth of just microfloral populations, ratios, possibly pathogenic bacterias, funguses, protozoa. I mean, it's very profound. We could do a whole 8-week seminar on that.
Yeah. So looking at, again, large intestine, small intestine, they're tied together. So commonly, if there's something going on in the small intestine, there's something going on in the large intestine, and vice versa. And commonly it will reflux up to the stomach, right? Because there's just the pyloric sphincter at the bottom. So whatever's going on in the small intestine can get back up into the stomach. If the stomach has an acid problem, it can cause problems with the material that's getting dumped into the small intestine, the chyme. So it's all kind of one system. So we normally, when we see folks and we expect that they've got a gut issue, we're going to look to correct that gut issue pretty fast. And the reason is, you cannot be healthy if you do not have healthy microflora. Okay, so that's to say, there was a study that actually looked at large populations of individuals that had disease. And one of the commonalities, regardless of the disease that they had, one of the most common components that they saw that correlated all those folks is low diversity of microflora and low microfloral count. Meaning when the intestines are sick, the body is sick, right? It controls a portion of the nervous system. And so anxiety, irritability, you were talking about the mental component is common. It controls, again, the energy level of the body. It controls the achiness in the joint. Yeah, the gut is kind of everywhere and everything.
And when you think the amount of neurons in the gut,
the enteric nervous system,
it's almost similar to the central nervous system. So we really do feel and think and act the way that we eat and are able to break down the foods that we need.
So the question comes up routinely, what's the area of the body that has the largest number of neurons? So is it the central nervous system, meaning the brain and the spinal cord? Is it the peripheral nervous system, meaning everything else other than the brain and spinal cord? And the answer is neither. It is the enteric nervous system or the neurons that are related to the gut. And so for us, again, we'll normally test. And so we're encouraging the same thing that you do for yourself. If you need help, you're welcome to give our office a call. We're happy to look into testing you. And like this, at least you'll have some guidance for whomever you're working with. But we're always going to order a 3-day stool. So we're going to look at the large intestine. We're going to look at inflammation in the large intestine. So number 1, calprotectin to rule out irritable bowel syndrome. We're going to look for eosinophilic infiltration or white cells in the lumen of the gut. We're going to look for IgA.
Yep.
And just make sure that it's not a food-related issue. To your point, we're actually going to look at all of the healthy microflora to make sure that they're balanced. We're going to look for any overgrowth of potentially pathogenic or disease-causing. We're going to look to see what's in your poop. So that's to say, if too much fat is coming out, we know it's an absorption problem, malabsorption. If too little fat is coming out, then we know you're probably going to have to increase fat since it's critical. Butyrate is critical in the gut. We're going to look at the 3 fats, butyrate, propionate, acetate, to get a sense of that. And we're going to look at overall diversity of the microflora, knowing that that's what's going to code for health, or the opposite, right? The less diversity of the microflora, the higher the risk of developing disease. And then the IgG, IgA testing. So we talked about that already. You're looking for probably a 184. You're looking for really, really good sensitivity and specificity. So you're looking for accuracy from a lab at that point. And again, you want what's inside the gut and what's outside of the gut. And on our follow-up, and we'll go to questions, but on our follow-up, we'll take a look at test results and maybe even do a couple of case studies so we can talk about how we've treated folks. And that way you have kind of a roadmap to know what the steps are as far as gut treating. All right, do we go to questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, so anybody that hasn't already submitted questions, go for it. All right, are these talks available after the day you give them? Yeah, listen, is it Carol? Okay, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
We have not done a great job turning these around, but we will. We're getting better at it. And so we will put the link up for the prior to, and we will get this one up as well. So expect it within about 3 days, and we'll put it on the Facebook link. So we run the MTHFR Experts Facebook group. And so if you are not already online with us, jump on. It's the place that we announce these classes and tell you what the agenda is going to be. And it's the place that we'll put the link. So again, just jump onto that Facebook MTHFR Experts group if you're not already there, and we'll make sure to get the link. Okay. Tammy?
Same thing. Love the topic. First 15 minutes due to the meeting where you record, put the link up, post online. Yeah.
All right, Tammy, you're in luck because we forgot to put the slides up for the first 15 minutes.
yeah.
There's a lot of us talking, but not a lot of slides. We only had 7 slides because we're trying not to bore you with them. But the long and short is, we'll absolutely put this up. Okay, what are your thoughts on
chronically low IgE?
Chronically low IgE. The question is how low? How low is your IgE? So, you really are looking at a histaminergic reaction. And so if you don't have a lot of IgE, but you don't have a lot of allergens in your environment, and you don't have a lot of allergy-related symptoms, you wouldn't expect an elevated IgE. So let me just make sure we're talking about the same thing. Okay, if you're running an allergy test, whether it's respiratory allergens like dust mites and
grass,
pollen, thanks for that.
Or pet dander.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're looking at food allergies and you don't really have allergies to say, then your IgE is going to be low. Your body should not be in a high histaminergic state. And so unless there's something else going on with your history where IgE would be involved, for me, I personally don't have an issue with low IgE. The place where people are really symptomatic is high IgE, but it doesn't change the fact, again, there are a handful of conditions that can show up medically when IgE is especially low. So I think we need a little more information on that. Okay, where is a good website to find local-ish functional medicine doctors? Can you guys tell? So the screen for us is tiny. And so I'm trying to read it, but I have to squint and get really close. I don't know, and I'm sorry for that. We have looked, I belong to the A4M, and I belong to the International Peptide Society. And so I'm familiar with both websites, of course. What I would tell you is you just have to, I don't know, it's almost word of mouth, huh? And going in and interviewing, it's tough to find good clinicians in general, functional or otherwise. I guess the same as it's hard to find sometimes good mechanics or good anything. And so again, for me, I like word of mouth, but it doesn't change the fact it can be a challenge for sure. Again, if anybody wants to see us. We manage things through telemedicine. We're here in Miami if you want to come on down. And I tell you, I'd give it to you if I had it, if there really was a reliable website, but instead, just like something like Angie's List, where everybody kind of puts their name over there, but you don't know who's great and who's not. I guess any directory is kind of the same. So, I mean, I'd look through a handful of directories. I'd call them up. I'd ask either the clinician or the office manager if you can just spend a few minutes on the phone, just talking to them and asking a couple questions and seeing if you can find a good partner for your healthcare. Okay, what else do we have? 3.2 was the last value years ago. Lots of gut issues.
Of the histamine.
Oh, Tammy. Oh, hi, Tammy. That's an IgE related thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, again, the lots of gut issues. So remember, if we're talking IgE, we're exclusively talking food allergies. Okay. If IgE is low, but you're having gut problems, it's because it's not an allergy related gut problem. So the fact that your IgE is low doesn't mean that you don't have gut problems. It means that you don't have a food allergy. Okay, so it still leaves the stomach and stomach acid production. It leaves the small intestine. It leaves the large intestine. So my point is, I like that you got your IgE tested, but the fact that you've ruled out food allergies in no way provides a comprehensive overview of gut health. And that's the reason that we gave everybody a couple of other tests that you may want to look at. So a 3-day stool to look at the large intestine, leaky gut, and IgA to look more towards the small intestine. So I would tell you, consider a more comprehensive gut testing protocol. Lung too is what Tammy says. Look, we're talking mucosal membrane. And so certainly in the lungs, we're kind of looking at the same thing, and it's not uncommon. So here's a link. This is kind of an interesting link. Oh, yeah, okay, we have like 2 minutes left. Thanks for that. Okay, so low vitamin D levels, blood levels, are implicated in asthma. And low vitamin D levels in blood, so we're talking about below a 33, but more specifically, we normally see it around 10, 11, 12, oftentimes are associated with all kinds of gut problems. And so gut and lung, interestingly enough, go hand in hand sometimes, and a common link is either, it's one of a couple things. Number one, low vitamin D levels. Number two, Klebsiella pneumonia, right? That comes to mind for sure. So Klebsiella pneumonia is a bug that lives in the gut. But so when you test stool, you'll see Klebsiella pneumonia if you're positive. But what happens is when your immune system just becomes worn down, then Klebsiella pneumonia, true to its name, will go to the lungs and create all kinds of pulmonary problems.
You'd never think that, huh?
It's, well, imagine, I guess that's the functional concept, right? It's all one body.
It is.
And so even
really
though
is.
different organs, it's not as if infectious agents see boundaries, right? Because it's all one body. And so if one area is sick, it's just a matter of time until another area is sick. And guys, it's not even, especially when we're talking MTHFR, we're not even talking areas of the body. We're talking about cellular medicine and cellular efficiency. We're talking about the mitochondria and how it leads to healthy cells or unhealthy cells. And as a result of the health or the disease of that cell, how opportunistic problems come into play. One more. Okay, thank you. I had one consult. Need another after labs. Oh, hey, Tammy, that is you. I'm so sorry. I saw, okay, Tammy, hey, okay, so listen, it's great to see you. Somehow it didn't connect, but yeah, of course, yeah, we got together. And then, yeah, I remember we were talking about labs. So absolutely, let's get those new labs and kind of get a sense of things. And then one more question, and then we've got to go, guys. How do we work with you guys? Oh, listen, it'd be our pleasure. You can just call the office and they'll schedule a time. I'll tell you what the process looks like. We'll get together the first time around. Our goal is just to get a clear understanding of who you are and what you've been dealing with. What we want to do is start dividing what is MTHFR versus what might be gut versus what might be thyroid or blood sugar or reproductive hormones. So there's a number of dysregulations that can happen in individuals with MTHFR. Our starting point is to categorize them and then prioritize them. So first, stick them into the category that they belong and then decide where is our starting point. So we talked already about the fact that oftentimes we'll start with the gut. But sometimes instead, we'll start with reproductive hormones. If somebody has a lot of blood sugar dysregulation, so they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, that may be the first area of need. So that first call for us is the time that we get involved to really understand. Again, we've got a whole team over here. For me, my background is science. RN, Dr. Farrow is an MD. So it's kind of a team of folks that are all looking at our areas of specialty, taking a look at you and really getting a sense, again, of who you are, what the actual issues are. And from there, we'll normally recommend the kind of test that we want run, and to prioritize which tests and when should they be run. We'll tell you if there are insurance options, what can be run under insurance. There are some things that insurances don't cover, so we'll let you know those things as well, and you can decide how you want to handle things. And then typically the second call, Tammy, that's what you were alluding to. The second call is after we've already gotten started, we've looked at labs, we put a treatment approach in place, and it's us checking in to say, hey, we put this treatment approach in place. We have some very, very stringent criteria when it comes to making sure you're getting better, right? So our goal is not to see if we can jump on the phone and talk. Our goal is let's assess the problems. Let's come up with a treatment plan. We know we've got to get you better, right? We know that you're not calling because you feel great. We know we've got to get you feeling great. And so our second time really is to tweak things further and say, okay, if now 30 to 40% of the symptoms have resolved, what do we have remaining? And what's the next step in the treatment plan? So if step number one really was blood sugar, perhaps step number two is the gut. So we're going to work through a very, very strategic protocol. The cost of the appointment. Let me tell you guys, the average appointment is an hour. The office charges $350 for an hour appointment. That way you guys have a clear sense of things. And the phone number or email. Okay, that's our last question, because I know we've been holding you guys. So the email is, it's info. It's info, I-N-F-O, at bodyscience.life. I think we told you last time we had the option for a .com. .life just seemed more, I don't know, more accurate, right? It's your life. So it's info at bodyscience.life. And you can call, the office is 305-901-5888. All right. So with that, we promise to get the taping of this up. We will absolutely put the link over on the Facebook page for MTHFR experts. And we will look forward to seeing you guys again soon. I think our next is this Thursday. I don't recall what it's on.
It's because we were debating.
I don't remember.
Going more in depth into this.
Oh, that's right. We were doing part
thyroid.
Two. Yeah,
correct,
okay, that's
correct.
right. Okay.
And let us know your input. Again, we want to cater to what you guys want. That's why we don't do we don't store PowerPoints for later. This is a real live discussion that we're having. And that's the way we like to keep it. So if there's something that you guys want to see more than, I believe it's thyroid. If there's something else that you want to see, let us know. Drop a comment on the Facebook, send me a message. I'm on there all the time. Let us know. We will change it for you if we have to.
And we will circle back with the labs. And I love the cover, right? So we have no idea what we're doing next, but I like the fact that, even though I admitted to that, I like that you didn't. I like that it sounded like, guys, we want input. That's a true fact. We want input. It's also true that I don't think either of us remember the next one, but we will find out because our office actually put the whole agenda together. Yeah. We will let you guys know. And it is true. If you have something, put it up on Facebook. We're trying for the first 8 classes to do things that really appeal to everybody. We know at some point we'll go deeper into the world of things like fertility, because we know a lot of folks are dealing with that, PCOS in women, androgen changes in men. So down the road, we'll certainly get more specific. But right now, for our first 8, we are really looking to try and provide the most general, broad-based information in order to try and help the most number of folks that have MTHFR. So let us know how this is going for you guys.
Yeah. Definitely. The more input, the more we know what to put forth towards you, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. We want to know what you want to know.
Yeah, we actually love the questions. We love when you guys participate. Otherwise, we've got nothing to talk about. I'll try and go on a few less tangents next time, but I can't make any promises. We'll see how it goes. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. Bye.